Nearly everyone has heard at least one completely ridiculous time travel story in their life. A person or group, using a device they built or found, travels forward or backward in time. Today, with technological advancements, we understand the importance of approaching every story circulating online with a skeptical eye. We know that we shouldn't blindly believe stories, even when presented with seemingly solid evidence. Recently, a program that has become quite popular abroad claims to offer definitive proof of time travel. Let's take a closer look at this program and its story. In 2006, in Kiev, Ukraine, the police responded to a call about a confused man. Upon arrival, they encountered a nervous young man dressed in old-fashioned clothes, seemingly unaware of his location and time. The camera in his hand was also noteworthy. Perhaps, unknowingly, they were face-to-face with a real time traveler. The man's name was Sergei Ponomarenko, and when the police asked for his identification, the document he presented was from the now-defunct Soviet Union. Although Ukraine was once part of the Soviet Union, that union had dissolved years ago. Seeing such an old ID from a young-looking individual was unusual for the police. While the man appeared to be in his 20s, his birth date on the ID was 1932. The police couldn't make sense of the story of this man whose appearance matched the photo on the ID. When they asked him what date he thought it was, he replied, April 23, 1958. Their reaction was, "Let's take you to a room and have you talk to a doctor." Thus, the young man named Sergei was placed in a mental hospital under the care of Dr. Pablo Kudrikov. The doctor took Sergei's claims seriously and asked if he could recall how he arrived in 2006 from a time he believed to be 1958. According to the doctor's notes, Sergei said, "It was daytime and I wanted to stroll around the city. I took my camera, but as I left the house, I noticed a strange, bell-shaped object. It was flying in an odd way. It's hard to describe what I saw. Maybe looking at the photos I took with my camera would be more helpful." Intrigued by Sergei's words, Dr. Kudrikov decided to examine the camera. The first thing that caught his attention was that the camera in his hand was an old and rare Yashima Flex model. The doctor, also interested in photography, recognized the brand and immediately realized the camera was antique because it used a type of film that had been off the market since the 1970s. This meant the film couldn't be developed at an ordinary photo shop. So, a photography expert, Adam Poisoner, was called in. Adam carefully removed the film and, based on the information on the spool, determined that it was manufactured in 1956. The film was in perfect condition, so Adam immediately started developing it, and the results astonished everyone. The photos depicted Kiev in the 1950s, old model cars, outdated clothes, street signs, and buildings that no longer existed. In one of the photos, Sergei was seen enjoying a cheerful day with his girlfriend, wearing the same clothes he had on today. The last image on the film roll showed the bell-shaped UFO that Sergei had mentioned. When Dr. Kudrikov asked about the UFO photo, Sergei said, "Do you believe me now that I'm telling the truth? I still don't understand what this object is or how something like this could happen to me. The moment I took the photo, I looked through the camera's viewfinder and somehow found myself in this year." Dr. Kudrikov, a scientific thinker, pondered that if this were some kind of spacecraft, perhaps it had taken Sergei on a light-speed journey through the universe and brought him back in a second. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, Sergei might have experienced time dilation. That is, while time almost stopped for him, 47 years had passed on Earth. This was similar to the twin paradox. That night, Sergei returned to his room, closed the door, and was never seen again. The hospital security camera recorded his entrance into the room, but never his exit. The room was under constant surveillance, and the windows were barred, so it was impossible for him to escape unnoticed. Sergei vanished mysteriously, leaving behind only the camera, his photos, and a great mystery to be solved. No trace of him or his escape was ever found, just like the police records of a real Sergei Ponomarenko, who disappeared in Kiev in 1960. The third episode of the 10-part program is titled Time Traveler. This series focuses on various topics such as alien abductions, ghosts, and crop circles. At the beginning of the program, a disclaimer informs viewers that it deals with controversial subjects and that the hypotheses presented cannot be accepted as true, requiring further scientific investigation. Therefore, the judgment regarding the series' claims about reality is entirely left to your personal assessment. In other words, the program itself states that the theories presented within it cannot be taken as definitively true, which is more transparency than you might expect from a source like the History Channel. It also reminds viewers that there are scene restorations. So it's important to remember that the images of Sergei circulating on the internet are dramatized scenes, not actual interview footage. However, some errors in the program are also noticeable. For example, the security camera footage shows the date as Tuesday, April 23, 2006, which creates a contradiction within itself. If you open a calendar app on your phone, you'll see that April 23, 2006 actually falls on a Sunday. Some have pointed out that the ID card in the program has the Communist Youth League seal printed on it, but this seal didn't exist during that period. We believe in the art director's skill, but it's hard to beat the power of the internet. Then, there's a picture allegedly from the year 2050, showing a scene where buildings seem to be copied and pasted, and the Empire State Building is also visible. But the point is, these are recreated scenes. However, the story includes an ID, photographs, and a recorded interview. So, what's real? A great work has been produced and it has spread widely, reaching billions. The program credits Konstantin Kovar as the screenwriter, Vladimir Rybus as the director, and Alexei Labak as the producer, with station owner Oleg Rakozna as the executive producer. But if we want to ask a direct question about this, there's no way to contact these individuals. So the evidence we have suggests that this is just a fictional work and that it has created a wonderful story. It's a truly impressive story, but it's important not to take it as seriously as you would take the Mermaid program aired on Animal Planet. Time travel is a fascinating topic, and there's a lot of thought about how it might actually work. For example, an article published in the journal Classical and Quantum Gravity in September 2020 suggests that traveling backward in time might be theoretically possible. The article examines calculations based on Einstein's theory of relativity, showing that an object in the universe could travel in a circular path through space and time, returning to its starting point. Einstein called this a closed time-like curve. However, physicists encounter challenges like the grandfather paradox when discussing time travel. This paradox is based on the idea of a time traveler going back in time and killing their young grandfather. This would mean that the time traveler's parents, and therefore the time traveler themselves, would never have existed. But if the time traveler never existed, how could they go back and kill their grandfather? The authors use the billiard ball model to address this paradox. Imagine several billiard balls on a circular table. If we push a ball from position X, it will roll around the table and collide with other balls in a certain order. However, the researchers have calculated that even if the ball's path is disrupted at some point, future interactions can correct its trajectory. In other words, the ball would return to position X at the same speed if it hadn't been interfered with, arriving at the same place again. This model explains that we can go back in time and change events, but not significantly enough to truly alter the future. Like the grandfather paradox, even if you try to kill your grandfather somehow, an obstacle will always arise. As researcher Germaine Turbar puts it, no matter what you do, the events around you will simply recalibrate. No matter how hard you try to create a paradox, events will always rearrange themselves to maintain consistency. I think this program is actually an interesting thought experiment, but it's like a kind of determinism. That is, it's as if the world will recalibrate around the changes you make in the timeline. This is similar to what happens when you make a wrong turn while using navigation. But the big question is, what triggers the recalibration? What holds reality together? A fundamental quantum force, perhaps? Unfortunately, the time when we can test such a thing and actually send a device or a person on a closed time curve is far off. Until then, we just have to be content with imagining, which we do constantly anyway. Even one of the oldest ancient Sanskrit epics, the Mahabharata, deals with the concept of time travel. I think we're so drawn to time travel stories because time is the most mysterious force in our lives, and it always keeps moving forward. Time never stops. Eventually, we all become its prisoner, and our greatest fantasy is to escape its grasp. Lisa Jasek, a professor of science fiction studies at the Georgia Institute of Technology, told Life Science magazine in 2022, "Time travel stories allow us to imagine that we can escape the clutches of time and look at the human experience, whether personal or for humanity, from a new perspective." Maybe that's why the story has resonated so strongly with everyone online. Even though we're bewildered and confused, somewhere deep down, we all long to be Sergei. In fact, there are similar stories that many of us often encounter on the internet. For example, in a photograph from 1941, amidst a crowd in suits and hats, there's a young man who seems out of place. He appears to be wearing new-style sunglasses and something like a t-shirt, and he has a portable camera in his hand. It turns out that the sunglasses were odd, but not unknown for the time, and the t-shirt with the letter T on it was actually a sweater with a letter sewn on it, like on sports teams. The camera itself was a Kodak folding pocket model. Still, these are from a decade before the concept of youth emerged. So let's appreciate the personality of this young man who seems ahead of his time. The story of Rudolph Fentz is also quite interesting. In 1950, a man with mutton chop sideburns and dressed in Victorian clothing suddenly appears in Times Square. Witnesses say this man had a bewildered expression, and a minute later was hit by a car and lost his life. The police find 19th century money, a letter dated 1876, and business cards with his name on them. These objects seem untouched by the passage of time. Mr. Rudolph Fentz is traced, and it turns out that he is known as the widow of Rudolph Fentz Jr. According to the story, Jr.'s father mysteriously disappeared in 1876. This strange tale is eventually revealed to originate from an urban legend. This incident, a short story written by Jack Finney in 1950, later became famous as Finney went on to write classic works like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Time and Again. In 2002, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, became part of a surprising story about Andrew Carlson, a mysterious investor who set off alarms on Wall Street. Carlson attracted attention with the claim that he turned an $800 investment into a $350 million fortune. Following this incident, Carlson was arrested, and even more surprisingly, he confessed to being from the year 2256. However, this story was later revealed to be false, fabricated by the infamous tabloid The Weekly World News, known for its hoaxes. The story caused a sensation in the media and on the internet, and still resurfaces from time to time. This image is quite surprising, considering it's thought to be from 1928. In the image, a woman in Los Angeles is seen walking and talking into her pocket amidst a crowd at a movie premiere. The image was shared online in 2010 as part of the DVD bonus materials for Charlie Chaplin's film, The Circus. Setting aside modern elements like cell phones and satellite technologies that didn't exist in that era, the device in question is most likely a hearing aid from that time. In those days, in-ear hearing aids might have been available to some people, and these devices could resemble today's phones. The woman appears to be talking into a device misleadingly like a cell phone, but in reality she's not making a phone call. Such historical images can sometimes be misleading and seem technologically incomprehensible, but upon closer examination it becomes clear that these types of events have simpler explanations that fit within the context of that era. The legend known as the Philadelphia Experiment describes a secret experiment allegedly conducted in 1943. According to this experiment, the USS Eldridge, a destroyer of the American Navy, became invisible and managed to travel from Philadelphia to Norfolk. Some accounts even claim that the ship went back in time for a full 10 seconds, although how this was determined remains unclear. This legend also asserts that the experiment caused severe side effects, with sailors becoming invisible. Secret government projects and conspiracy theories are often surrounded by fantastical stories, and the Philadelphia experiment is one such example. Interestingly, however, this legend has maintained its popularity over time and even became the central theme of the 1984 film, The Philadelphia Experiment. What do you think about these quite popular claims? Do you think time travel is possible? If you had such an opportunity, what would you do first? Don't forget to share with us. See you later.